All right, Tanya Summary Shiur. It is week 44, Kananahara, and we're doing the second part of chapter 20 of Igeras HaKodesh, which is like part 4 of Tanya. So just to reiterate, we're doing part 4, chapter 20, part 2 of said chapter 20. It's the latter two-thirds of chapter 20. We're going to give hopefully a brief recap of what we were discussing until now in chapter 20. And a word of warning, chapter 20 is a very deep chapter. A lot of the Kabbalah is going to be glossed over because it's a summary shiur and a summary shiur of Tanya, and I don't know, maybe it could be claimed that Tanya is a lot of Kabbalah, but we're trying to stick to the more practical note on that at the end, in Mirza Hashem, which already makes the shiur a little bit of a Yetzim and a Klal because we don't usually do notes at the end. But yeah, so I guess we'll jump right into it, and I have no idea if this is going to be long or short because I'm going to be trying to summarize a lot, but I'm also going to try to give good explanation for that which is summarized. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So last week we were discussing in the beginning of chapter 20, essentially, that there's a line in Zohar which says something to the effect of that Hashem is one with both the lights and the vessels of Atzilus. The more literal translation would be he and his vitalities are one, and he and his causations are one. The vitalities refer to the lights of Atzilus, and the causations refer to the vessels of Atzilus. And we set out to try to explain what this means. So the Alter Rebbe says that, in general, there are two ways that Hashem creates. There are two ways that something could come to be. The first one is Ilah and Alol. That's not a particular order, but I believe that's the order we explained it in. There's Ilah and Alol, which is cause and effect. You have one moment of time flows into the next moment. It's seamless. The transition makes sense. It goes from point A to point B, or I should say time A to time B. Each snapshot of the universe is frozen, and each snapshot just blends and flows into the next one with a very clear delineation of cause and effect. Hitting the baseball causes it that in the next freeze frame of the universe, it'll be flying. And the velocity increases, the location of the baseball changes. Everything is cause and effect. The crack of the bat on the ball caused the ball to fly. So that is cause and effect. The next thing is something from nothing. There's an absolute nothingness, and then there's something. It's there. And it's different from Ilav Alol, where everything makes sense. Cause and effect is you have the cause, and the cause, it's very clear how it flows into the effect. Something from nothing is not like that. So we said that in general, when you go from one spiritual level to another spiritual level, Hashem created the world, something spirituality, and ultimately we ended up with the physical world. So most of the chain on the way down, from just pure, complete, abstract spiritual, where there's no existence, until down here where we know that there is existence, because some kind of argument, we're here, we know that the world exists. So most of that is cause and effect. It goes from one spiritual level to another spiritual level. An example of cause and effect on spiritual level would be if you know something, then you're able to form ideas based on it, and so the knowledge will then flow into a deeper understanding. So that's just one example of how you have spiritual cause and effect. But anyhow, it goes from cause and effect, and effect, and effect, and effect. But ultimately there is a kind of inflection point where there is a break, wherein we say that things left the complete abstract, and now things are very real. And that inflection point is by Malchus of Atzilus, the last final level of Atzilus, and there are 10 vessels of Malchus of Atzilus, and that is essentially what we're holding in this summary of what we have thus far. So that's about a third of it. We'll see how the rest of it goes. So as a kind of introduction to the next two-thirds, the latter part of the chapter, I think it's important to give an example, just to have an example that I can reference to go back to. Because without having a clear kind of mental map of something that relates to this, it's going to be a shtickle hard. It's going to be a little bit difficult to to follow the progress of what we're talking about. So the example that I'm going to give is making a peanut butter sandwich. I would say Vegemite toast, but I don't want to lose my American audience. They might not know what that is. Peanut butter sandwich. A person is making a peanut butter sandwich. The person such as myself. So I know that I want to make a peanut butter sandwich. Now, I am not in the kitchen right now. But I know that if I want to make a peanut butter sandwich, I go to the kitchen, and I take bread out of the cabinet, and I take out the peanut butter, and I take out a knife, and I open the bread, and I take out the knife, and I smear it, and I put another piece of bread on top, and voila, I have a peanut butter sandwich. I wanted to toast it, I could toast it. Fine, that's a peanut butter sandwich. Now, really, there's a lot that happened over there. Firstly, the peanut butter sandwich is not yet made. The peanut butter sandwich exists as a mere idea in my mind as I'm talking about it. Even the fact that I'm talking about it means that it's expressed more than just the hunger that I have for a peanut butter sandwich. I am going somewhere with this, please bear with me. Even though it sounds probably very interesting, but you need to have something to bear in mind. You have the hunger for a peanut butter sandwich. The hunger is really predicated on the idea that I know that I enjoy peanut butter sandwiches. So that's a deeper level. But then I have my desire for a peanut butter sandwich. Then I have, in order for me to desire a peanut butter sandwich, there needs to be some kind of knowledge what a peanut butter sandwich is. So I have the essence of my desire, but that's built on the idea that I know what a peanut butter sandwich is. Not only do I know what it is, but I also understand it. I have an understanding of all the textures and the flavors and the nutrition value and whatnot. I might not know the nutrition value off the top of my head in calories, but my body knows that it's nourished from it. But then ultimately, the main thing is that there will be some kind of push, some kind of inspiration that'll make that not just that I have the knowledge of the peanut butter sandwich, not just that I understand the peanut butter sandwich, that I'll actually be inspired, that now I, a person, someone that exists completely independently of a peanut butter sandwich, will then get up and go and make a peanut butter sandwich, taking the bread out of the cabinet and the peanut butter and the knife and doing the smear and putting the top piece on, and that's an action. That leaves me. It departs from me. It's something distinct from me. The peanut butter sandwich now exists. Before, the peanut butter sandwich was an idea in my mind, and now the peanut butter sandwich is a reality. I'm not going to go as far as saying that I created something from nothing when I made a peanut butter sandwich. The bread existed before, and the peanut butter existed before, and the knife existed before. Everything existed before. But as far as me, if you look at me as being a self-contained reality, then yeah, the peanut butter sandwich is something from nothing. It came from me. It came from the depths of my desire and of my hunger, which is a very poetic way to describe making a peanut butter sandwich. Again, please bear with me. This is all important, mainly so that I can have something to reference back to. But hopefully it'll be worth it taking like 4 minutes so far. But my point is that you have all of the steps that happen in my psyche, and then you have all of the physical manifestation steps, but ultimately there's a shift where it goes from the peanut butter sandwich is this idea to the peanut butter sandwich now exists independently. I can get up and not eat the peanut butter sandwich, walk away, and the peanut butter sandwich still exists. Although who would do that to a poor peanut butter sandwich? I don't really know. But that's beside the point. That is the mashal, and hopefully we'll have this as a good reference to get back to for this chapter of Tanya. So the Alter Rebbe says that there's a line, not tchilasim b'seifan. The end is stuck into the beginning. So to explain this, I can reference the peanut butter sandwich, that the end of my involvement with the peanut butter sandwich is the very beginning of the life of the peanut butter sandwich. My involvement started with the fact that I was hungry, and I desired a peanut butter sandwich. I thought about a peanut butter sandwich. I understood the peanut butter sandwich. Ultimately, I got up and I made the peanut butter sandwich. The end for me is the fact that I made the peanut butter sandwich. The end for me is the beginning of the peanut butter sandwich. The peanut butter sandwich now exists on its own independently. I could get up and I could walk away, and it's still there. So the end for me is the top. It's the beginning for the existence, for the life of the peanut butter sandwich. A more appreciable example would be making a child. That the end of the father's action is the beginning of the life of the child. The child will go on to live a whole life and maybe father or mother children of their own. But the end for the parent is the beginning for the child. This is also how it is with Malchus of Atzilus, that there's godliness that gets filtered down and broken down until ultimately you have some kind of image of what this universe can and should look like that finishes in Atzilus. Atzilus is that. It's that image. It's the place wherein Hashem can say that there's a full spiritual image of this universe, if you will. And it doesn't exist. It's not something that we could say has its own existence. It is created, it isn't created, it's in some kind of liminal space between them, it's in limbo, but it doesn't properly exist. That's what Atzilus is. Malchus of Atzilus is the last point of that. It's saying, okay, now we're actually pivoting and there's a universe. The universe is going to exist. That is, in a sense, the beginning of the life of the universe. Same with that, the peanut butter sandwich, once I made it, it's there, it's sitting on the counter. It's just doing its thing, it's vibing on its own. So, once you have Malchus of Atzilus becomes Keser for Biyah, becomes the first level, the top, the pinnacle of what's beneath it. It's the beginning of this universe as an independent existence. The Alter Rebbe says the reason why Hashem wants to have that we exist is an independent existence, which is why it goes through all of this quote-unquote effort, essentially, to why everything is different, why everything pivots over there, is because he wants to be able to rule over entities that see themselves as being distinct. It's hard to have company when everything is you, and you appreciate that everything is you, and everything that you've created appreciates that it's not really created because it doesn't actually exist and it hasn't actually been created. Essentially, it's a little bit messy. He wants to have creations, he wants to have entities that have been created in the sense that they feel their own existence. That's how you get company. Anyhow, that's a point that Alter Rebbe makes, which is a very important point thrown into this mix. That is why we have that pivot point. But then the Alter Rebbe says that essentially these two ways of creation, of Ila and Olol, cause and effect, and Yesh Mi'ayin, something from nothing, they, in a sense, correspond to two ways that Hashem relates to the universe. There's Mamalik Olman and Seviv Olman. Mamalik Olman literally means that Hashem fills all the worlds. And what that means essentially is that each spiritual level flows into the next spiritual level, in the same way that a moment of time just flows into the next moment of time. The next moment of time came completely from the moment of time before it. So essentially every single level that exists in this world, all the way down to this physical world that we appreciate, that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, everything is directly from Hashem. But in a sense, there's something greater, which is to say that every single level of this universe that Hashem created, really it's all like complete nothington. It's all like a figment of his imagination. We just had Yom Kippur. We said all the Lashonos that it's Ketzel Over, Chachalim Yof. It's like a passing shadow, a fleeting dream. Everything in this universe is like a complete nothing to Hashem. And not just like, it is. Hashem created us from his essence, from an essence that we can't even appreciate, the essence that we call nothing because we can't appreciate it at all. Hopefully it's not too confusing. But it is a confusing chapter. So with all of that in mind, we are going to get back to the peanut butter sandwich at least one more time, in Res Hashem. But with this, the Alter Rebbe then pivots into a whole explanation of the importance of physicality. And he goes through many examples of plant life and animal life and inanimate life, about how all of them are very special. And I would say the main example that he brings out is the fact that we, as humans, need to eat things which are lower than us. And animals, maybe plants, we drink water, we breathe air, we're very dependent and reliant upon these things. And the Alter Rebbe says that, in a very big way, it's because of this principle that we said before, of not tchilasan b'seifan, of the end is rooted, is stuck in the beginning, or the beginning is stuck in the end, I should say. So, to get back to the peanut butter sandwich, we said that the end of our action is the beginning of the life of the peanut butter sandwich. That when we finish our action, that is the beginning of the existence of the peanut butter sandwich. Now, we mentioned that you could technically put the peanut butter sandwich down and walk away, and that we would really want to do that, maybe save it for lunch. But ultimately, the end of the peanut butter sandwich, the lowest level, once the peanut butter sandwich exists and it's going from moment of time to moment of time, ultimately, the point of the peanut butter sandwich is to eat it. I wanted the peanut butter sandwich so I could eat it. So, really, the end of the peanut butter sandwich is further along. It's first the peanut butter sandwich exists, and then I take a bite and another bite, and next thing you know, the peanut butter sandwich is gone. In a very big way, the end of the existence of the peanut butter sandwich was rooted in the beginning of my whole desire for a peanut butter sandwich. Why did I want a peanut butter sandwich? I wanted it for that end, so that I could eat it, and so that I could be full from it, and so that I could be nourished from the peanut butter sandwich. The whole existence of the peanut butter sandwich, yes, the top, the pinnacle, the peak of the existence of the peanut butter sandwich is when it existed independently, before it was eaten, after it was made by my hands and placed on the counter. But then I take a plate, bring it to the table, and eat the peanut butter sandwich. And that end, when the peanut butter sandwich is all gone and ruined, that is the essence of the peanut butter sandwich, why I created it in the first place. I created it because I was hungry. Out of context, this is probably going to sound fantastic, but this is what it comes down to in this universe, that everything flows from level to level. And if you would look at it just in a very basic way, you would think, okay, well, the lower something goes, the less spiritually inclined it is, right? Hashem created people, and he created animals to be less intelligent than people, and he created plant life to be less intelligent than animals, if you could even say that they have intelligence, but at least they're alive. And then you have inanimate objects, and they're definitely not the purpose of creation, because they can't even think. But really, Hashem created the universe in such a way that there's that inflection point where, yes, we become something at that inflection point. But really, firstly, Hashem created everything in a sense, equal, because he appreciates everything, that everything is a complete nothing to him. And he made this whole system of levels that was part of what he wanted for this universe, that we should have a hierarchy, that we should have this cause and effect, and ultimately we're all the way at the top of the chain. Ultimately, we'll get to that in a second, Leoneder. The point is that Hashem made from level to level to level, ultimately, that you get down to the lowest things, the inanimate objects, and that is really the purpose of creation. And everything we're supposed to be able to utilize for mitzvahs. I'm getting ahead of myself in a sense. The point is that the lower that something goes, in a sense, that is why it is more spiritually charged. And that is why, when we eat food, we're able to achieve nourishment from things which are of a lower spiritual standing than us. You would think we can only achieve nourishment from something that's a higher spiritual standing. But actually, it turns out that's not the case. We need to eat food. We need to drink water. We need to breathe air. And those are both inanimate things. And those are two main things that sustain us. Animal life contains, by and large, many fewer calories than plant life. Just the way that it is. There is also this hierarchy system in science. I'm not going to get into that in the food chain. Really, it all gets energy from the sun, which is, again, an inanimate object. But the point is that we are able to continue on in life because of these things which are apparently and supposedly lower than us, but really they're more spiritually charged, because that's the way that Hashem made the world, that as you go lower and lower and lower, that reaches higher and higher towards the ultimate intention. Just like the peanut butter sandwich. So then the Alter Rebbe says that with this it's easy to understand how mitzvahs are so important. And we're missing the end of the letter. Remember, this is a collection of letters, this fourth part of Tanya, and we're missing the end of this letter. But he does say das l'navi nakel, that it's easy to understand, and I do think it's relatively easy to understand based on the context that he's given, which is essentially, and also the language that he says, is that the neshamas come down to the world, that the souls come down to this world to do mitzvahs, to do physical mitzvahs. And I think it's important to appreciate the distinction. It doesn't say that we were created necessarily for this end of elevating the inanimate. Rather, he says the neshamas came down to the world. And I think it's important to appreciate that neshamas are, in a sense, at that peak. We're at the pinnacle of this universe, of this created universe. That is to say that we said there's an inflection point by Malchus of Atzilus. Neshamas are from that inflection point, or even higher perhaps. They're from Atzilus. Atzilus being really the whole universe of created and not created, the liminal space, the limbo, as I mentioned before. So neshamas are from Atzilus. Neshamas come down into this world to refine this world. They're down in this world to refine this world and everything in it, and including us, including our bodies, because a human is not just a soul, and a human is not just a body. A human is caught in that fusion between soul and body. The soul comes down to the world to refine everything around it, using the body. The body itself also becomes refined in the process. We are that merging of the highest of the high, the neshama, and the lowest of the low, the body. The body is ultimately dirt. That's what it says in Bereshit. It says that man is called Adam because we come from Adama, we come from the land. We're created out of dirt, and ultimately we return to dirt when we pass away. And ultimately, the neshama is down here to be able to refine the body. So in a sense, we have a standing in the highest of the high. That is to say, in the highest of the high of creation, which is to say that we have a very direct standing in Atzilus. But at the same time, we're also the purpose and the ultimate of creation. In the same way that eating the peanut butter sandwich is the ultimate reason why you'd want the whole story of the thought and the inspiration, getting up and going and making and taking out the bread and the peanut butter and smearing, all of that is so that ultimately you could be full from the peanut butter sandwich. Our physicality, the entire universe's physicality, and also us particularly, our physicality is to that end. The purpose of it all is for us to be able to elevate as a soul and be elevated as a body. That is the universe. I'm kind of filling in the gaps over here further beyond what we had in this past week's Tanya, because the letter ends off on a blank note, but ultimately just to get back to the beginning where we said the line that Hashem and his vitality is one and Hashem and his causations are one. If I had to answer the question based on all the above, I would say that Hashem is one with the neshama. That is to say, the neshama comes from Atzilus, and the neshama is a portion of Hashem, literally, as was said in the second chapter of the first part of Tanya. And not only that, but also the physicality is rooted in the ultimate of Hashem's desire for this universe, and the entire purpose of everything is to be able to elevate ourselves, to be able to elevate our bodies, I should say, and all of the physicality around us. So Hashem is one with the neshama when you look at it from cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. You get down to Atzilus, where the neshama is actually from. Atzilus being that limbo space, that liminal space. And beyond that, Hashem is also one with his causations, that Notzkilosim B'Seifan, that the beginning is stuck in the end, and Hashem ultimately desires a physical dwelling place down here, not to say a house, but to say that a world of refinement, a world where he can be appreciated even in the midst of complete physicality. So that is Tanya for this past week. There is a note that I wanted to make, and I will make it in Mir Hashem, but I think I'm going to record it as a separate, maybe a couple minute thing, because this is already, I think, the longest Tanya Summary Shiur to date. And yeah, in this next week we're going to be discussing the mitzvah of tzedakah, a few aspects of it, as well as some details about davening, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, Mir Hashem, looking forward. And have a good Yom Tov.